Okay, so last time we had taken up the short chapter on education, which was primarily directed towards parents and parenting. There is only one commentary which I could find, unless Pooja knows of others, which is from 30th December 1953. Pooja, are there any other commentaries you found on this chapter?
No,
Okay,
there's only one.
right. So, although the first question is not related to the text, it is a general question which is asked to the mother. All the other questions flow from the chapter. I thought, as the question is interesting, let's take it up also. Okay. The question is about the instinct of destruction in children. Okay, Nishi, would you like to read this response?
Yes, Didi, I'll do that. What do you mean by the instinct of destruction in children? It is not there in all children. I have known many who, on the contrary, were very careful. Children are not as concretized, materialized in their physical consciousness as older people. As one grows up, it is as though one is coagulated and becomes more and more gross in one's consciousness, unless through a willed action one develops otherwise. For instance, the majority of children find it very difficult to distinguish their imagination, their dreams, what they see within themselves from outer things. The world is not as limited as one when one is older and more precise. And they are extremely sensitive within. They are much closer to their psychic being than when they are grown up, and much more sensitive to the forces which later will become invisible to them. But at this moment are not. It is not unusual for children to have some sort of fits of fear or even joy in their sleep from dreams. Children are afraid of all sorts of things for which older people don't exist anymore. Their vision is not solely material. They have a kind of perception, more or less exact and precise, of the play of the forces behind. So, being in the state, they are influenced by forces which otherwise have no hold over people who are shut up in themselves and more gross. And these forces, which otherwise have no hold, and 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 these forces, the forces of destruction, for example, or forces of cruelty, forces of wickedness, of ill will, all these things are in the atmosphere. When one is more conscious and well formed within, one can see that they are outside oneself and deny them any expression. But when one is very young and lives in half dream, these things can exercise much influence and make children do things which in their normal state they would not do. I believe it is due to that above all. There is also the phenomenon of unconsciousness. Very often, a child does harm without even being aware that it is doing harm. They are unconscious. They are shut up in their movement, and they're not aware of the effect of what they do. That happens very often. That means that if a child is rightly educated and one appeals to his best feelings and explains to him what to do things, that to do things in such and such way is harmful to others, and one can make this very tangible for them with a little demonstration, they stop doing harm very often. It is above all a question of education. These half conscious movements of cruelty, it is very rare for parents not to have them. Well, that is enough to set its impression upon a child's consciousness. There are some, but that is a very small number who have an adverse formation inside them. These are irretrievably wicked children, but they are very rare. There are none here, happily.
Quite interesting, no? This whole, what she's described here. I mean, you can think of so many examples from your own life, your own childhood, and also from what we see, the children we observe. Any concept that is not clear? So the first thing is about the physical consciousness not being very materialized. It has not solidified, so it is kind of fluid between the vital world and the physical world. So whatever they imagine or they dream, they find it difficult to distinguish it from reality. So often when we say झूठ बोल रहे हो तुम, ऐसे नहीं हुआ था, that is what I try and explain to teachers again and again, that children don't tell lies. Very few do. For them, it is real. They are not able to distinguish between what they imagine or what they visualized in some form or the other, or they heard in a story or they saw as a dream, and they think it really happened. So they are not really lying. They are just living in a world where everything is real, not only what can be touched by five senses, but other things also. And therefore, they are also open to perceive the forces, the subtle entities, the subtle forces, and are very porous to them. As some of you might know, Rudolf Steiner uh, has given so much importance to, in the Steiner Waldorf education, that the effect of the parents' thoughts, the sounds around the child, the pitch of the voice, the tone, and he has established a relationship between that and arthritis that the child might develop in later age, rheumatism, or liver problems, because all these frequencies have an effect on the child's very, very malleable bones and muscles as they are being formed. And then they establish themselves and later manifest as, so any vibration of falsehood, especially, manifests as illness later on in the child. And we see that for ourselves also now, that any uh, lowering of consciousness, any unconsciousness, any falsehood, movements of jealousy, negativity, they definitely manifest as illnesses in ourselves, be it a gallbladder issue, be it an acidity, be it a stomach ache, or a cold, cough, fever. All these have their psychological, their consciousness based causes. If one is aware, one can trace them often. So, this is what the mother is saying about that the children, their vision is not solely material. That's why they get afraid or happy. To us, it seems without any reason. But they are looking at something, they are being able to perceive something. And sometimes they voice it also. I've had interactions with children where they voiced something they were seeing, which I could not see, but for them it was very real and concrete, and they could describe it. Uh, so she's explaining the source of wickedness. When the question was regarding wickedness or instinct of destruction. So first she is just describing how children, in what kind of ether they exist, what is their internal atmosphere, what are their, how do their senses function. And then she comes to that, all that's why they are open also to these forces of cruelty, wickedness, ill will in the atmosphere, in their parents. Even if there is a slightest degree, the child will pick up and it will manifest in the child because children are transparent. Plus, they do their conscience or their mental discernment has not developed, or self reflection. that they can understand the cause and effect. So they might push somebody because they are not aware that pushing means that the child can fall, can get imbalanced, can fall. Falling can mean can hit themselves somewhere. That whole sequence is not formed in their head. So for them, it's just an action, it's just a response. They did this. They didn't mean any ill will, but what happened was can have serious consequences. So that's where the mother is saying that it is unconsciousness. They are not aware of the effect. So if you educate the child rightly and through demonstration, through make them aware of not good and bad, aware of the consequences of their actions, establish the cause and effect. So then it is a question of education. And she says there are very, very few children, very rare, who are born with a wickedness in their being. There is an adverse, a kind of a hostile manifestation within the child for some reason, like various reasons. So that is there. Anything anybody wants to say or ask or clarify? Yeah.
Um, I
Yes.
was just saying that this is quite interesting because when I read the question, I thought maybe she's going to explain mostly what she's explained in the end, that mostly what you were saying, children are just experimenting with things. They don't have any experience about if somebody would fall, if something would break or something would hurt. And it's mostly because whatever their caretakers, parents, or whoever is the way they respond, that builds on if they will repeat it or they will, stop doing that thing. And also that they pick up so many things from their families and everything. So, like you said, they wouldn't even know that this is a lie or anything. They would just say it because it just is in their very recent awareness. But what she's saying about this in the beginning, what she's explaining is quite interesting, and this about the influence of forces, because they are so their consciousness and their perception and everything. Just kind of want to mull over it in my head. I'm really wondering. But I don't know. The last part about very, very wicked children, I don't know about that. I've never come across, thankfully, like she says, happily, there are none here.
Yeah. That she says it's very rare,
Yeah.
but it exists. So one cannot just say, oh, all children are angels. You know? Anyway, no child is an angel. They're always a mix of angel and devil. The children, animal and divine, you can see very clearly in the kids. Okay. So
Didi, I'm a
I
little confused here. Like a 3-year-old is many times I've seen they are like many times, few times I've seen they're very manipulative. They very easily play with adults, and so understood that in the beginning they are not. They may be a clear and they have picked up from the environment, but a 3-year-old can be really, matlab, 2 years, but how to work with that? Because that cruelty, that whatever thing is there is in the environment, and we as a facilitators cannot take that from the environment. If
but listen, all education, isn't it manipulation? Even if you have the highest aims, you are still manipulating the child.
Even parents.
yeah,
Co-parents are
matlab, that
yes.
matlab, they are lying, they are manipulating.
Or
Sorry.
not manipulating means that you have an end in mind and you somehow or the other want to influence the other person to
Hmm,
follow the end you have in mind,
hmm, hmm, hmm,
in the way you want to. Don't
hmm,
isn't all the whole parenting about that? Isn't whole teaching about that? So we are manipulating the children all the time. So
hmm.
how is if manipulation is bad, then all of us should stop doing it. If it is you are meaning only when they, I would say they are great psychologists. I don't look at it as manipulation.
Okay.
Personally, I'm always amazed what keen observers and keen psychologists the children are. I mean, they have figured out that what triggers mother, what triggers father, which for which thing you have to go to this person, for which thing you have
Yeah.
to go to that person. How do they figure that out? It's tremendous psychology. And they don't make mistakes there. As an
Mm.
adult, I will. They won't. I personally don't find it manipulating. I find it very smart and very wise on their part. And it is mirroring to us our behavior, where our chinks are.
Thank you for giving me such a nice perspective to look from a very different angle. Yes, true. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so now,
She was wanting to say something.
who, Nishi? Where is she?
I
Yes, Didi, there's this sentence in the second last paragraph,
Hmm.
which was these half-conscious movements of cruelty. It is very rare for parents not to have them.
Yes.
That state, I couldn't make sense of this.
Where is it? It is in
Second last paragraph at the bottom. It
This last
last paragraph.
last paragraph. Yes.
First, it is these half-conscious movements of cruelty.
First line.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So basically, she's saying that all of us, the adults and parents here, she's talking about, uh, we are not free from, some cruelty in our being. The cruelty can be as simple as, you know, uh, on the road. I mean, I noticed this myself, so I'm sharing just a small example. On the road, suppose somebody is trying to overtake me, yeah, and they are doing it in a very nasty way. Yeah, I'm quite pissed off with them. And okay, I behave in a very civilized fashion and all that. But if something happens to them or they get pulled up by the traffic cop or something, I'm quite happy. And there is also a desire. I wish, this person will, something bad will happen. They will, get pulled up or this, that, the speeding and this thing. And there is a movement, a very small, tiny movement of cruelty, of wishing ill upon the other. Uh, okay, in general life, maybe they will not call it cruelty. I notice it, and I notice many such other small movements in myself. So uh, there are these movements in all of us. For the child who's very receptive, they pick it up.
Hmm.
They won't know this behavior because you have not even expressed it, but that vibration will go in. So the child's immunity at the vital level, you can say, is very low. So even if there is the slightest germ of cruelty there or nastiness,
And
the child
catch it very quickly.
very quickly.
Got it.
Goodness also.
Thank you.
Okay, now this is a passage from the chapter. For it is certain that the nature of the child about to be born will depend very much upon the mother who forms it, upon her aspiration and will, as much as upon the material surroundings in which she lives. The part of education which the mother has to go through is to see that her thoughts are always beautiful and pure, her feelings always noble and fine, her material surroundings as harmonious as possible, and full of a great simplicity. And if in addition she has a conscious and definite will to form the child according to the highest ideal she can conceive, then the very best conditions are provided for the child to come into the world with the maximum of possibilities. So, the question, Sagarika, why don't you take it up?
Yes. Thank you. On education, when great souls want to be born upon earth, do they choose their parents? Ah, that depends on their state of consciousness. It depends on the state of their psychic formation. If the psychic being is completely formed, if it has reached the perfection of its being and is free to reincarnate or not, it has also the capacity of choosing. But I believe I have explained that to you already. They don't have a physical sight like ours so long as they are not in a body. So evidently, they look for a body which is adapted and fit to express them, but they must give its share to the material inconscience. If it may be put thus, and to the necessity to adapt themselves to the most material laws of the body. So, from the point of view of the psychic, the choice of the place where one is born is important. It is more than an insignificant detail. But there are so many things that can't be foreseen. For instance, one chooses an environment, a country, a certain type of family. One tries to see the nature of the likely parents. One
Hello.
asks, sorry, sorry,
Hello, sorry.
yes, anything, anything is wrong? Hello,
I think,
hello,
Rika, just continue. We can hear you.
okay, okay. Um, so, from the point of view of the psyche, the choice of the place where one is born is important. It is more than an insignificant detail, but there are so many things that can't be foreseen. For instance, one chooses an environment, a country, a certain type of family. One tries to see the nature of the likely parents. One asks for certain already well-developed qualities in them and a sufficient self-mastery. But all this is not enough if one does not carry in oneself a sufficient dynamism to overcome the obstacles. So, all things considered, this is this is not enormously important. Anyhow, even at the best, even if even if the parent have collaborated consciously, there is an enormous mass of the subconscient and the yet lower inconscient, which from time to time rises again to the surface, gets stirred up, damages the work, makes calmness and silence indispensable. Always, always a preparation is indeed. Even if one has chosen a long preparation, not to speak of the phenomenon of being half shunned at the moment of birth, the descent into the body, which often lasts for a very long time before one can escape from it completely.
Yeah, sorry, Sagarika, there was something urgent I had to attend.
Okay, okay, it's okay. So, can you explain it, matlab, easily?
So the question is regarding the choice of the parents, but by special souls, not every soul, the great souls. That's the question about, right? And the mother is saying that it depends on the state of consciousness. The souls which need to be born, the great souls that are being talked about, it is their psychic formation. Because as we know, or we have read rather, that it is the psychic only which, after death, everything else, like the body, to obviously is destroyed, but the physical consciousness, the vital and the mental, they go to the worlds, the vital world, the mental world. And the last thing is the psychic, which travels to the psychic world and takes rest to assimilate all its experiences. And that period can vary for different souls. It could be a few years, it could be a few moments, it could be anything. This is, I'm talking about what Sri Aurobindo and Mother has said. This is typically a point which different religions, different philosophies have described in different ways and have different opinions about. So, where the psychic is completely formed, it has reached a certain perfection, and it is also free to choose whether to be born or not to be born. What is generally the aim of all yogas, traditional yogas, liberation, mukti, moksha, nirvana, to be free of the cycle of birth and death. So, a great soul which has reached that kind of perfection and can choose to be born or not. So, she's talked about it somewhere else, some other conversation. But she says the psychic doesn't have a physical side. No, once the body is not there, the physical side obviously is not there. Evidently, they look for a body which is adapted and fit to express them. Express them meaning the next progress it has to make. Because the psychic assimilates the experiences and prepares, okay, what is the next thing I have to develop in myself? Suppose in this life, I was very careless with money and I never paid attention to that aspect of my being. In next life, the psychic might feel that, okay, I have to be born in circumstances where I will learn how to handle money, how to deal with money. Just an example, or a particular quality or whatever. So they look for a body and material circumstances which are fit for that experience to take place. So just like when we need to learn Pilates, we look for the right studio to learn Pilates. We won't go to a Taekwondo studio for that. So it's the same thing. So they must give its share to the material in conscience. But the moment they have to come into a physical material body, material is governed by inconscience. They cannot escape that. No matter how great the soul. Sri Aurobindo's body also had to fight illness and inconscience and everything. No matter whether one is avatar or one is whatever, they are still subject to all these laws. Yes, Ila.
What is inconscience? What does material inconscience mean? I don't know these words. There's another one that she uses as well, which is like this, which is difficult to understand as well. I don't know where it is right now, but I don't know well, how would you sort of explain material inconscience?
So, in conscience, when Sri Aurobindo and Mother have described the levels of consciousness or manifestation of the divine, inconscience is the complete opposite of consciousness. Like black hole is the complete opposite of light or white hole, right? So it is something which is totally, totally dark. Uh, in the levels of consciousness, it's the bottom, the bottommost, from which creation has arisen. So it is the same, in a way, the way I understand it, it is like black hole. Within it contains all light, but we cannot see. And the process of evolution is of that light gradually emerging and becoming more and more conscious and visible, and because of that evolution happening.
So
So
what is material inconscience then?
material meaning at the level of matter,
Oh,
at the level, because matter is the first thing to manifest in the levels of in the evolution. Earth is made, so earth is a form of matter, rocks, stones, gases, all this is matter. So matter is nearest to the inconscient. And then as the evolution rises, the grades of consciousness rise, the vital is a little further away, the mind is a little more high, and so on. So there is this vertical plane of the descent of consciousness, the divine consciousness descending, and then ascending back again, which is the process of evolution. And the descent, Sri Aurobindo calls it involution. The divine involving itself in creation is involution, right to the level of inconscience, becomes the opposite of what it is. And then evolution is the divine again evolving, coming out of that inconscience, darkness, whatever, back again to become divine, but taking all the levels up.
So what exactly is she saying here?
So she's saying that the moment the psychic has to take on a body, then it will also be subject to the law of inconscience, because matter is form, it cannot supersede those laws. So it will be subject to death, it will be subject to illness, it will be subject to pain, it will be subject to tamas, to laziness, inertia. All those things will come, even if it is a very great soul.
Okay, thank you.
And this answer is related to only great souls, or
At the moment she's answering, of course we are much more subject to it, but she's saying even in the context of great souls, she's
okay,
explaining
okay.
that it is not that they choose their birth, so they are like,
Mhm.
yes, Harpreet?
So I just wish to say I mean, matter inconscient we are trying to see is also the way we see the material things around, and we are also made up of matter. We are also made up of same or a similar matter. There is a process through which, that whole matter, including our body and whatever objects we can say see around us, have there is a linkage of certain processes which we are aware or we are not aware. That is why we see that after death we will become mitti ban jayenge ya raakh ho jayenge. So but you look at that matter which doesn't have life, you still have connection with that. But what is it that happens through cycles and cycles? It's like Nanak said, mitti Musalman ki pede pai kumyar. Matlab they wanted to say that we don't burn after death. So he just wanted to highlight the importance of matter, not that he wanted to accuse Muslims. He would say that what will become of your mitti, whether it will become some clay and become an earthen pot, is not known to you. And at the same time, it also talks about the processes through which matter is subjected to so many changes which physics wants to study. So and also when you say it will be subjected to the laws, it is not only illness and all that, but also the biological processes of mitosis, meiosis, the cell differentiation that nobody can overcome as of now. Many organisms do overcome. Then we say, oh, the evolution, that is an indication of evolution when biology tries to understand, single celled organisms, and then the cells and all that progress, and the spine comes. That is how they see the progress right now. But it is that they have to, so like as much as the scientist knows that after pregnancy, the cell is going to divide, and in 36 week and in this much week, वो एम्ब्रियो फॉर्म होता है, तो वो लॉज सबके ऊपर लगते हैं. मतलब वो जो सोल है वो उसको चेंज नहीं कर पाएगी. I mean, suppose it chooses a body, and then something goes into that biological processes, that will be then that soul's fate कि उसने वो उसको choose किया, उस body को choose किया. I mean we can wonder Stephen Hawking की body ने अगर वो soul थोड़ी भी conscious थी तो कैसे उस body को choose किया, for that matter. I mean, we can all be curious about it. And also, I mean, to this whole passage, it always reminds me, like you were saying, that different religions, take it up differently. It also, when I was first introduced to Sri Aurobindo and Madhus, this particular theory, it always used to remind me of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's, which is believed to be his, his work, in which is known as Bachittar Natak. But I'm sure there are similar archetypes in other this thing, which is known as that he was Dusht Daman and a very evolved soul. And in that play, basically, he's sitting and meditating, where the god calls upon him. And there are other religious archetypes like Jesus and Buddha. I don't know whether it was written later because it is disputed historically, but it is very interesting to see that how a force calls upon him and ask him to be born on earth to do some sort of task. And I always still feel that that archetype is, I mean, calling it archetype because psychologically is very it just sort of gives strength to what mother is talking about, though not exactly. So this is what I mean, because that soul that finally is born and as Guru Gobind Singh, and he tries to live uh, the the task he has been given, bestowed upon. but I'm sure it must have been inspired from these all yogic narratives. And that is what gives strength to the oral yogic narrative, in this particular continent. That is how I see it. So that's all I wish to say. I hope I made sense in this, but we can talk sometime also when we meet later about this whole thing. Thank you, Didi.
Okay. So now she's talking about, from the point of view of the psychic, the choice of the place where one is born is important. It is more than an insignificant detail. So it is not by chance that we are born in India, somebody's born in UK, somebody's born in US, etc. But she's saying, but there are also so many other things which cannot be foreseen. For instance, one chooses an environment, country, certain type of family, one tries to see the nature of the likely parents, asks for certain already well-developed qualities in them and a sufficient self-mastery. But this is not enough. If one does not carry in oneself a sufficient dynamism to overcome the obstacles. She's explaining the psychic mission, its manifestation through birth, and then the circumstances it meets in life, which it has to go through and still try and achieve the purpose for which it has come upon earth. That's the journey she's explaining. So, all things considered, this is not enormously important, meaning the choosing of, that the psychic choosing that their parents, she's saying this is not, if you consider all the other difficulties which are still there to be overcome, this is not so important. Anyhow, even at the best, even if the parents have collaborated consciously, meaning, because in places mother has talked about that even in the moment of intercourse, or you can call down a special soul, you can go about, when she talks of conscious parenting, it is about also how to invoke a special soul to come into you and be born through you. There is an enormous mass of the subconscious and the yet lower inconscient, which from time to time rises again to the surface, gets stirred up, damages the work, makes calmness and silence indispensable. So even if there were these rare circumstances of parents also being conscious, of collaborating to invoke a special soul, still things are not going to be easy. I mean, it will be better, but it is not going to be now everything is going to be simple and easy. Always, always a preparation is needed, even if one has chosen a long preparation. Not to speak of the phenomena of being half stunned at the moment of birth when the child is born, poor thing, doesn't know what has happened to them. The descent into the body, which often lasts for a very long time before one can escape from it completely. The descent into the body, which lasts, this is very interesting. The descent into the body, which often lasts for a very long time. It gives an impression as if the whole of into that physical body, although the child is born, but still the descent is going on till the child is actually formed with all the subtler levels. That's the impression it gives to me. I'm not sure. This sentence. Would anybody else like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, in ashram, I have heard of couples, especially, not all and not many, because, but they have tried to be very influenced by this particular aspect, and that how to be conscious during the conceiving of the child, and then its birth, and then taking care of its environment. So, and many of them possibly could do, because it also depends on how husband and wife are able to cooperate, and that's why they choose that environment. They want to come back, especially all the ex-students, that, oh, please let us be back, because that is the place where all these things for the fully conscious being, as much as it can be in this life, can happen. So just that, apart from other people choosing very consciously about the birthplaces these days, many parents want it to happen at home and in harmony, because not the same things, but the similar things are being talked about.
So
Ruhi asking a question. Ruhi, why are you calling me Didi? What has happened to you? Huh? Wanted to ask, what does the long descent mean in terms of an abortion or miscarriage? A long descent. I don't know exactly what it means otherwise also. This is my approximation of the understanding which I shared with you of this sentence. I also find it very interesting. What is the mother referring to here? And it seems like the entire consciousness takes time to, settle down into the body even after the birth. Uh,
Maybe this is
there
only
is
for,
miscarriage or an abortion. Miscarriage while child is still in the womb. Uh, to
but
me, it
isn't the
seems
question
that
about,
that is the fate that soul has chosen. For whatever reason, some part of the journey was left, some experience had to be had, and the soul kind of just came for a few weeks, few days, or whatever. The I don't know. I mean, this is what I understand. Yeah, Ila, you were wanting to say something.
yeah, wasn't this about great souls? I mean, isn't this referring only to great souls? So maybe the descent into the body is going to be, complete. It's not going to be an abortion or a miscarriage, because the whole point of great souls being reborn is that they get born. Unless you're saying that they want to be, conceived and miscarried. And that's also part of a great soul's journey.
It may not be that every sentence till the end of the passage is for only great souls. I think the mother has, often it is very difficult to gauge, but often mother's responses would also depend on the vibration the person is carrying, the questioner. Sometimes she might be responding to that. So, suppose I'm asking this question when great souls want to be, and I have this whole, I've made a kind of a put the great souls on a pedestal, and I'm seeing, oh wow, for them it is so easy. They must be choosing their parents, their sadhana must be so easy. Poor me, I have to struggle so much. Suppose I'm coming from that mindset, her response would be also hitting out at that, what I'm carrying behind. And somewhere I get the impression here, that impression, that the mother is deliberately kind of pointing out, hello, things are not as easy. They are not so simple. It's not a simple mathematics that this and now life is going to be easy and there are so many factors which everybody faces. And so she is going on to, even if there are special conditions where parents are conscious, they have collaborated, even in that case, there will be tremendous difficulties. And obviously, it is not to say that don't make an effort, because everywhere else she's saying make an effort to be conscious, make an effort to call down a special soul, make an effort to bring up children consciously. Yet, she's also saying, but there are tremendous difficulties. Also know that. So, Ruhi, I'm sorry I cannot answer it further, because this is one of the most painful and mystifying questions, that why do little kids suffer, or why do lives get cut short, which to us seems very cruel, etc., etc., and unfair. We have done a whole chapter, this Ila's question, a few sessions back on, the evil and how to. In Life Divine, we have read a whole chapter, which is the chapter title is The Divine and the Indivine. It has given some very interesting answers, but I would not say that I have got my 100% answer yet. As the book unfolds, I think the answers will keep evolving. But this chapter was very interesting because there Sri Aurobindo takes up all these questions which come into our minds, that how come the divine has allows such imperfections, such cruelty, etc., to exist, and what should be are we to accept it as part of divine Leela? Are we to surrender to it? Are we to fight it? So he takes up all these questions in that chapter, which is very interesting.
So, Didi,
Yeah.
what does mean in an insufficient, okay, एक minute. हाँ, sufficient realism
Sufficient dynamism, force of
Us
nature, will,
means
force of nature. Dynamism is the power to act, to manifest, to actualize, the
oh,
the will.
us. And another question. So soul free when we die. Okay. So
Sorry,
with soul, sorry, matlab soul freeze, everybody's soul freeze when we die, right?
comes free. Soul,
Yes.
soul is always free.
Okay. Matlab after death, soul is there.
Yes,
Okay. Then uh, with this matlab psychic being also live with this soul. This
let's
psychic,
that. Let's not get into that. Just for the time being, psychic and soul is the same. Just
just same. So both are same. Psychic and soul.
right now, for our purposes, it is the same. There
Okay.
are places where Sri Aurobindo has defined what is different, but
Uh,
basically it is the same.
okay.
I'm going to make an attempt to speak right now, and I'm sorry for the noise in the background. But I just want to say that my understanding of this passage is, Anuradha, that uh, that every soul that is born comes with great qualities, is great in their own way. Okay, then if you have sufficient dynamism in the circumstances of whether you say family, whether you say environment, whether you say the place you're born, that maybe the soul chose, but still things can go wrong because you're on earth with the function, with whatever problems, etc., that earth does have. And the physicalities of being on earth, depending on that becomes what happens to that person, to say that we say that this is a realized soul at the end of their life. I mean, there are very few, like say, who you can, even Sri Aurobindo at a certain age in which year was it? Was he recognized for that, for the work that he was thereafter going? Was it at birth or was it at a certain stage in his life? Is a question that I'm posing right now. Also, I'm saying that every soul is really a special soul. It's also the dynamism of the entire process that gets them to go to a certain place, and that's how I'm reading this passage now.
So what she has described applies to everybody, but this thing of choosing the parents does not apply to everyone, or choosing the circumstances where you consciously choosing does not apply to everyone. The psychic has to be evolved to a certain level to be able to do that. That is what she says in the first few lines. So, but this whole process of, all the difficulties which are there and the purpose that psychic comes, every psychic comes with a purpose, with a mission. So, that all that is, the more realized your psychic is, more evolved it is, the more power it has to come forward and overcome the prison of the physical and the vital and the mental tyranny. Uh, it has that power. And when you say wrong, so what we call wrong may be the choice of the psychic, because it's like sharpening the pencil. If you have to sharpen it, you have to put it into the sharpener and chilo it. So pain and everything, misfortunes, pain, mistakes, failures, certain things are necessary for the experience the mission psychic has. Certain things might be absolutely essential, that it has to fail, it is part of the game. And certain things, when the psychic is in the front, if there is a failure due to other reasons, like life is so complex and so many other forces are there, the psychic still has a way to navigate through that traffic jam. If the psychic is if one listens to it, then one can still come out of that. So it is not exactly black and white.
So I totally agree with you, and I'm in total cognizance with you on that. I think this last line which says the descent into the body, which often lasts for a very long time before one can escape from it completely. I'm just asking this to the group and opening it up for discussion is that at birth, sometimes as a mother, you don't feel that the child has left you for a long time. There is a deep connection that remains and it remains for a long time. Does it mean that? I mean, I know I earlier asked about miscarriage and all that, but I'm leaving that aside. Is that what it means, that the descent into the body, which often lasts for a very long time? For some people, the descent is something that now the soul is there. Now the mother is carrying that, and that actually that umbilical cord doesn't get cut for a really long time. You may cut it, the doctor may cut it at birth, but it doesn't really happen. So what is it?
I think what we discussed earlier about the descent of the soul means primarily for the body which is being born, and there would be, now this is, we could just guess what time does the soul enter the body. And so the phenomenon of being half stunned, and I think before one can escape from it completely, is the phenomenon of being half stunned. But this sentence itself is very interesting and the most catching of the whole paragraph. But
Yes, I
I don't
totally
know, as a
agree.
mother,
I totally agree because if on that accord, the 20-week cycle of saying by law that you can abort your child 20 weeks before, does that, I have read it in a text uh, in some other Veda or some philosophy that it does not, it has not descended into the body. The soul has not descended, or whatever you may call it. The psychic has not descended into the body. And so that is also why, even in the ancient philosophy, they used to say, wait just for the first beginning period, abort if you don't want. I think this needs a lot of research. Just my opinion.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are all these things, what happens when the soul comes and what happens after death. These are things which because they are not perceptible to us through our tangible senses, which we are used to, which is the only, generally, largely the means we use for knowledge. That's why this is not, and it is not open to scientific instruments as yet. There may be a time when it does become open. So then people will know perhaps. And okay, shall we continue? Yeah.
So Ruhi's question that we still continue the child within us, that I don't know as a mother how I feel for my children, but as a child of my mother, I feel uh, very compulsive that I have to give her back something. There's always a very subconscious feeling uh, that I felt that is not अभी उन्होंने या पिछले मुझे, but there is a feeling that she has nurtured me in some space that I have to give her back. There's something is there for me to give her back. So मुझे लगता है कि then just जब Ruhin asked this question to the group, suddenly this thing came to my mind. Just wanted
That
to
I want to add further to that Prerna, that's so beautifully said, because uh, I had that deep connection with my mother also, right till her end on earth, which continued for a while. And I used to always find that there was this deep connection. My children were born through, though she was like their grandmother. But when the three generations were together, there was this It was almost like one binding. It was like, I don't know. I don't know if you get it. It was like I don't know who was giving and who was taking anymore. At a very spiritual level, I would say.
Okay. Yes, Nishi, you want to say something?
No, Didi. I was just saying, I don't know if we have time for another question.
At 6:12. Sagarika, do you want to share as a mother something regarding this? You're on mute.
When I saw her first time, so I took her so gracefully. She is my child. I really surprised to see her. And it's really, that is my uh, remembering day when I saw her. That day, that moment, I never forgot. Never. And when I was pregnant, I felt her every each and moment. Means and she is my post delivery. Means time was over. So uh and nobody was there because doctor said it was by surgery. So the next day they will surgery will be the next day, would be the next day. But I received so kicking, and every doctor and said, but they said no, it's emergency case, so we have to do immediately operation. So and that doctor who operated 11, 11 operation that day. So he left the hospital to that day, and for personally for me, emergency case, he came back and did my operation at 11:30 in the night. So it was so, and only that after that after operation 3 to 4 hours I felt too much pain within me. But when my child was born, when I उनको जब बड़े किया, I never feel any kind of pain from her. It's very true. But I don't know, now I feel that this pain is maybe वो बाकी था शायद. Now I can feel that. I वो मुझे कभी कोई रात मुझे जगना नहीं पड़ा. She was so quiet and calm. इतने she was really, look, now she's nice even today, but no pain I can feel for her. Everybody say mother ये नहीं सोता है, वो नहीं खाता है, वो नहीं पीता. I never felt any pain from her, from her childhood. Yes, it's very true. I don't know what happened.
Okay, thank you everybody for sharing. This chapter is really belongs to the mothers. We have very little to contribute except intellectually. So we still have a few questions here, which we will take up next time. Okay. Thank you then.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you.
We hadn't finished this conversation, although I must say that all the questions are not related to the chapter that we read. So it is our choice whether we want to read all the questions put up or we just want to maybe read one more because this is still related to the parent and child. About the wickedness we already read last time. Is it? Did we read?
Yes, we did read.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think this is another question. We just read the first two questions. Didn't
I
we?
don't think we read the wickedness part. At least I don't remember it.
We did read it. Yeah.
I don't remember.
This
Oh, no,
question, I think
I
we
don't
did not
think we
read.
read it. I don't think we read it.
I don't remember
Oh,
this.
we haven't read this. We read the first question, which
Yeah.
had part of the cruelty part.
Yeah, and the great souls, do
Yeah.
they choose their parents
That's
this way?
right. We read the Great Souls thing.
Okay. So who wants to start today, the reading? You
I'll
can read.
begin, Diti.
Okay, Nishi. Read the whole answer.
Some children are wicked. Is it because their parents did not aspire for them? It is perhaps a subconscious wickedness in the parents. It is said that people throw out their wickedness from themselves by giving birth in their children. By giving it birth in their children. One has always a shadow in oneself. There are people who project this outside. That does not always free them from it, but still perhaps it comforts them. But it is the child who profits by it, you see. It is quite evident that the state of consciousness in which the parents are at the moment is of capital importance. If they have low and vulgar ideas, the children will reflect them quite certainly. And all these children who are ill formed, ill bred, incomplete, especially from the point of view of intelligence, with holes, things missing. Children who are only half conscious and half formed, this is only due to the state of consciousness in which the parents were when they conceived the child. Even as the state of consciousness of the last moment of life is of capital importance for, for the future of the one who is departing, so too the state of consciousness in which the parents are at the moment of conception gives a sort of stamp to the child which it will reflect throughout its life. So these are apparently such little things: the mood of the moment, the moment's aspiration or degradation, anything whatsoever, anything, everything that takes place at a particular moment, it seems to be a so small a thing, and it has so great a consequence to bring into the world a child who is incomplete or wicked or finally a failure, and people are not aware of that. Later, when the child behaves nastily, they scold it. But they should begin by scolding themselves, telling themselves, in what a horrible state of consciousness I must have been when I brought that child into the world. For it is truly that.
I must say, I don't agree at all.
Sorry?
I don't agree at all.
Hmm.
I mean, children born out of rape, okay, which is the worst thing that can possibly happen.
Louder, please.
Louder. I don't know how to make it louder. Let me try.
Sagarika, check the volume that you have on your computer. If you can make that louder.
Yes, it's full. I don't know why I can't hear you.
Okay, let me try again. So
Okay.
what I was saying is that, take children born out of rape, which is the worst thing that can happen at the moment of conception, because there is so much evil in the mind of the perpetrator and fear in the mind of the woman being raped, does not mean that all children born of rape are going to be nasty children. I mean, some of them, in fact, lead incredibly good lives because they get dumped somewhere, somebody picks them up, and it is their good fortune which places them into a home, which then nourishes the child. And, there's so much else that happens other than the moment of conception, which defines how the child is going to be. And those children, some of them turn out to be wonderful specimens of human beings. So I'm not sure that it should be just that one act at that little time that causes so much wickedness. So I don't know, it kind of doesn't sit well with me.
Me too, because I believe that the parents' consciousness plays a part, but there are so many children, like in my family and friends, and in my with my real sister, we have adopted children in the family. Now we don't know from where they've actually, in the sense their background, but we see them blooming as such beautiful children with the upbringing and the family atmosphere and the kind of consciousness level that we are giving them now.
Any other views?
My question is, when mother is saying ill-formed, ill-bred, are we talking about special needs here, or something that also over here?
I don't think so.
Okay, incomplete. Okay, thanks.
She doesn't mean retarded children.
Okay.
I also thought that because she's saying that ill-formed because there are so many cases where um, some things happen during the pregnancy, right? And she says over here, from the point of view of intelligence, withholds things missing.
Might be, but maybe that's not all she means.
Not all.
It's not,
Not all, but part of it, maybe.
could be, but need not be all the special needs children or all
Okay.
uh,
All, not all. Yeah,
children. It
sure.
need not be that.
I'm just wondering at the phrase state of consciousness in which the parents were when they conceived the child. So I'm like really thinking that is it that moment of conceiving the child, or is it about the entire duration of 9 months of pregnancy, that what state of mind it is, and uh, so that's what is going on in my mind.
Yeah, the way I see it, first of all, it's not an absolute answer. She begins with perhaps. It is perhaps a subconscious wickedness in the parents. And it is not absolute, meaning that this is the only reason. There are always so many factors. But if you see it in the context of what we read earlier, she said it's very rare that children are wicked. So this question is related to children who are really wicked. Because earlier she spoke of other factors which create cruelty or etc. in the child. But she said it's very, very rare that a child is intrinsically wicked. So, here, first of all, the question, the way I see it, is not with regards to all kids, it's regard to children who are wicked. The response is related to those children, which anyway are very rare. And there she's talking about that how where does that wickedness come from? That maybe it is from the parents, that there is a subconscious wickedness. Parents may not be overtly wicked, but there might be a wickedness. Sometimes people are overtly wicked, but there might be uh, a subconscious wickedness, which we spoke about last time also, uh, in the parents. And that, just like the genes, just like the genetic makeup, so that kind of is transmitted to the child. The good qualities are also transmitted, and the bad qualities are also transmitted. So it all depends on the mix of things, what kind of mix one gets. And it's very true, of course, after the child is born and the whole pregnancy, the thoughts. In elsewhere, she's spoken a lot about that, how the mother forms the child when the child is in the womb, all those 9 months and all, and the importance of prenatal education. And then after the child is born again, like, where the child is brought up, what are the influences. So there are so many factors. There can never be a single factor which is responsible for anything. But this is children who are really wicked. Where does it start? So she's talking about, in that context, the perhaps it starts from the parents themselves, that there is a certain wickedness which gets transmitted in the moment of conception, and it can express itself in an ill-formed child. Ill-bred breeding is, of course, afterwards, and incomplete with holes and things missing. Now we cannot be sure what she is referring to, whether, like Prerna is saying, is it special needs or is it anybody, like there is or psychologically challenged, bipolar or whatever, or it is people like us who apparently have an intelligence, but there are certain holes in the intelligence. No matter how much we try, certain things are not there, or there is an incompleteness in the intellectual makeup or something like that. So I don't know, unless there were more responses to it, it's very difficult to figure out exactly who she's referring to. And she's talking about half conscious, half formed. So there she's relating it to the conception and the moment of conception. And she's saying, just as the last moments when a person leaves the body, no matter what kind of life they have led, but the what their state of consciousness is. There are people, I've heard personally so many cases of people who led a very saintly life, and in their last minutes, moments, or last months, or last few days, they became completely opposite. They were abusing people, they were um, using bad language, they were doing all kinds of vulgar acts. Uh, Sometimes that also happens, and the reverse also. So, so she says that just as that stamps, similarly, the moment of conception leaves a kind of stamp on the child, and that reflects. Now, this reflection need not be, because if we look at it in a very, very black and white terms, somebody is wicked and somebody is not. But all these movements of wickedness, of goodness, of nobility, they're very subtle, and they're at a very subtle level. And yes, your upbringing and everything might might give them a different direction, or might, you may be lucky that the worst side of you are not challenged enough to show the worst side in yourself. I mean, really, like I think maybe we spoke about it last time, that if I'm challenged enough, I don't know, like I can say, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I'm this, I'm that. But if I'm dying on an island and something, in that moment, I might eat anything and everything. So I cannot say this is my absolute value and feel that I'm very goody goody person and I'm a non-violent person, or I'm this or that. So if life doesn't challenge me, I will go away thinking that about myself. But when life challenges, you don't know in what circumstance which aspect of yours will come out. So that is all. That is all that I understand from it, that she's ascribing a huge responsibility to the parents, uh, starting from the conception, but she's not saying this is the only factor or this is the final and decisive factor.
But
That's how
but she's saying that it really is a very important thing.
it is a very important thing. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I think maybe, listening to what you were saying, what struck me is that maybe she's referring to evil children, children who are really evil, meaning there are some children who are evil.
Yeah.
When they're very small, they kill animals, they hurt small things. Their tendency is to hurt. They shoot their siblings. They they burn houses down intentionally, and
Huh.
they really really enjoy it. So there is a streak of almost evil in those kids.
So the
I don't
question
know
is
how to
related
describe
to
it,
this,
but
because if you remember the previous thing where she had spoken about that these are very rare.
yeah, very rare, very rare. So maybe
Retrievable
she,
wicked
yeah,
children.
so
These
that's
are
what I'm
very
saying. So
rare.
these are irretrievably wicked children. So
Yeah.
maybe this is with reference to that.
Yeah.
Therefore, she's saying that for that rare child, that moment of conception becomes even more important, because I think
Yes.
for the general child, it probably doesn't make as much sense.
No, the moment of conception is important for every child, because not just the moment of conception, from conception to uh, the entire pregnancy and then to the upbringing. I mean, all these are factors which play a role. Normally, one never thinks of the moment of conception as being a factor in that it will, science talks about genes.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the state of consciousness when the child is conceived. They don't talk about that. They talk about the physical factors and physical things which transmit. But she's talking about all the vibrations.
I agree. I was just saying that it perhaps is more relevant to very evil children. Maybe that's when the wickedness, at that moment, the wickedness gets
Yeah,
transferred.
yeah. For
to-
wickedness, she's
Because,
saying. But
yeah,
I have known of people who have tried to conceive uh, based on Mother Shri Aurobindo's writings and all, who have tried to conceive in a very conscious way, almost like a sacred thing, to get into the act with that consciousness. And there have been different results. So, but
meaning,
this is an area normally one doesn't talk about or give importance to. But and even now, prenatal education has become important. It has come into people's consciousness. This part has still not come. Maybe it will come in the future.
what were the different results from that consciousness experiment?
Well, it is very difficult because it is not a thing which is objectively catalogued and X number of people have done it. You cannot have those statistics because these are individual cases. So, and it could be a very subjective way of looking at it also. But they felt that the whole experience and their pregnancy and the child born, they felt that it was different. Now, the very fact that you put yourself in that state and you take it as a gift of God, that attitude itself will create a difference when you approach the whole pregnancy and motherhood or parenthood in that way. That itself is a deciding factor. So, unless very solid research is done on it, it is difficult to say. So, at the moment, one can only take it, either based on some common sense and something or based on faith. That's all.
I believe that okay, maybe the consciousness level and the thoughts and the fears and whatever the evil part was there, and maybe it still resides in some subconscious in the parents. But mm, if the child during the upbringing years, if we kind of work to give the environment of maybe we can kind of reduce the spark is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, of course. So that's what I mean. You cannot look at only this answer. You have to
Yeah.
first, in a way, we are doing an injustice because the mother, these conversations got recorded and got put down.
Yeah.
But again and again, the mother says, "Don't take my words as final, because they are said in a particular context to a particular person, and they have a meaning for that person and for that context. So when taken out of it, they lose their meaning." Because the same question, suppose somebody else asked her after a year, she might give a totally different answer. And if you read mother's conversations, you will often come across such instances where she's saying a completely different thing. So, because she's just responding to, in that moment, what is behind the question and what that person needs to hear. Needs to, not wants to, needs to hear for their progress. Okay, this second question is also related. I'm sure it will also evoke quite a response because it was written a long back and views have changed quite a bit here. So, Ila, why don't you read it? Because I'm sure you are going to give a response on this. Yeah.
Sometimes it so happens that a mother educates her child well, but the people around spoil it. Then what can the mother do? Yes, that's perfectly true. The worst of all, which men usually do, is to leave their children with servants. It is a crime. For these people have an altogether vulgar consciousness, altogether low, altogether obscure, And quite spontaneously, without wanting to do so, they let it enter the children. Naturally, there is also the age when children are put to school, and there they begin to come in contact with a host of children whose company is not always quite desirable. It is very difficult to avoid these relations. But all the same, if one has started life with a little consciousness and much goodwill, when one meets people who are not desirable company, one feels it. And if one is good willed, immediately one tries not to see them or not to be with them.
Hmm.
No, I wouldn't want to generalize and put anybody in a category like this, worst of all the helps and all. But there are incidents everywhere where actually, if the children are left completely with helps, there have been they've been neglected, and there have been incidents where the helps have been involved in certain activities where, like there was these incidents from Bangalore, um, lots of incidents some years ago where from Bangalore societies where the helps uh, used to take somebody used to come over, and all the helps from all the buildings, they used to take the children out for strolls, and then take them out in the that begging gang and things like that. So maybe they must have written something because of some incidents.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, I do have a point of view on this, quite quite strong one as well. My view is that if you're going to make the effort of having a child, then it probably makes sense to put in the time and the effort to bringing that child up. If you are going to leave your child with other people, it doesn't matter whether it's help or your in-laws or anybody else, then you are actually abdicating your responsibility to the child. So you shouldn't be a parent. You don't deserve to be a parent if you are going to give away what is your primary role, which you have chosen. You have voluntarily decided to be a parent. Then you have to give in that time and that effort to bringing up the child and making sure the child is nourished in every sense. So yeah, I mean, I think this makes perfect sense. I agree that it's not that you can say the help is like this and the parents are like that. That's not the case, but it's just that there are many people around you who may have very unconscious styles of parenting, and you shouldn't, as a parent, abrogate your responsibility and give it to somebody else and then say, oh, I don't like what's happening to my children.
Any other views?
I'm just so surprised to read this because I thought this was a fairly new phenomena that was happening. So in our school, we have this concept of one child, one help, and all the children, I would say 80% of the children are with help. And when they cry, they're asking for their didis versus for their moms. So they're really spending time with the helps. So I don't know if it's comforting, but it's just amusing to see it was happening even back then, and the mother is responding to that.
I have a funny incident sharing it. Like in nursery, children are in a family tree, they want to put their help's name, then their parents and other people.
But then, it just goes to show because
Yeah.
that's a big
Yeah.
influence on them, right? So
Yes,
obviously, go for
very
it.
true. Very true. Yes.
So, responding to what Pooja said, personally, I do not think she's talking of special circumstances like you mentioned, which are happening today. Perhaps they were not happening at that time. She's talking about basically the fact that different people have different consciousnesses. And yes, today, but even today in the West, maybe, where there are students who take on the role of coming, being a child minder or a babysitter or that kind of a thing. Here, there is no doubt that socially, culturally, educationally. Generally, the class from which the helps come, the servants come. Now we don't say servants, but that time that was the word. So the servants come, and especially at that time, and even today, I feel it's a very different class. Uh, just as I might be very different to the Bollywood celebrities, the class they have. I will not feel comfortable there, nor would I want my child to be mingling with them or spending time with them. For instance, so it is a different class consciousness, and vulgar word has the meaning of, today we use the word vulgar in a obscene way. We take it to mean obscene, but vulgar, when Shravind and Mother I've seen they use it, vulgar, the meaning of vulgar is common, common. So it is not a consciousness which is evolved, that kind of work. And especially she's talking to people who have come to the ashram to work on their consciousness and to do this whole yoga of consciousness. So she's talking in that context, because she's not talking generally for the world. She's responding to these questions being put by when the children had come, and there were parents and there were sadhaks and relatives of the children who were studying in the school, and teachers trying to understand what is happening with children, etc., etc. Because later on she goes on to also talking about other children who come to the school who are not desirable company. So, and she's saying these influences you cannot avoid, but if there is a lot of goodwill, then it is possible that spontaneously you feel, and children do. You see at times children who you think somebody is very nice, but the children refuse to go to that person. And somebody might have a very rough personality outwardly, but children respond very well to that person. With children, that person is very good and they really respond and uh, to them. And these days, like Prerna is saying, and yeah, I've also witnessed it in my own family also, that the child becomes very attached to the help because they have this unconditional love kind of thing, and they know they can depend on them anytime. Uh, Parents might be busy, other relatives might be busy, but the help is all there for them. So they are more happy to see them than to see us. When the help is going away, they say, don't go. They never say that to us, don't go. So that is also happening. Sagarika, you want to take the next question? This one?
Yes, Siri.
It's related to the earlier one only.
But if the power of ill will is greater than the other person's goodwill, yes, that's true. That may happen. Fundamentally, that is way we always come back to the same thing.
After
Sorry?
just read carefully.
Okay. Yes, that's true. That may happen. Fundamentally, this is why we always come back to the same thing. One must do all one can as well as possible and do it as an offering to the divine. And then once all this is settled and organized, well, if there is really an aspiration in the being and a being that is a being of light, it can counteract all bad influences. But once one puts one's foot into this world, one can't hope very much to be quite pure and free from bad influences. Every time one eats, one absorbs them. Every time one breathes, one absorbs them. Then, essentially, what is necessary is to do the work of cleansing, work of cleansing progressively as much as possible.
This
Can
is
you describe it, please?
No, sorry, what are you asking, Sagarika?
Can you describe it? मतलब, I
Just read
could not follow it. Yes.
because you were reading. Just read it quietly for yourself. Anybody wants to say anything? Is it clear, Sagarika?
Do we get to read somewhere, Didi, that how is the work of cleansing done?
Yeah, she's spoken about it in so many places, various exercises, the whole thing of self-observation, self-organization, that whole exercise is about this only.
Okay.
And
I think this is not actually, it's not pertinent only to this chapter or this question. This is a truism, meaning in the sense that this is something which is relevant for everybody, whether you're a parent or not a parent or anything. You have to be continually in a state of, cleansing yourself. And that is why I think it's so important to, practice all the various things that one can do to not allow, those kinds of influences to, sneakily come up on one. It's like, for example, if you go to places which are very, very crowded, we've talked about this before, you pick up so much, which is around you, which you're just sort of collecting. So you have to try to get rid of that. If you unconsciously collect it, you have to consciously get rid of it. And I think that's just good practice for anybody, irrespective whether you're a parent or not.
like last time we spoke of, that Rudolf Steiner has given so much importance to the vibrations, the around the child. Uh, in case of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, they have given importance to it, yet they have not prescribed a discipline. But they have given indications. Like with children, for example, there are conversations with the mother about the library, setting up the school library. So there she's spoken about how important it is to how to choose the books which will not leave a bad impression. Subconsciously, the child will not pick up, you know, violence and various things from the books. So, same way, music, how to pick up music. So what kind of experiences to surround the child with? Because, and still, like she's saying, nobody will be pure, because with every breath, with every food that you eat, with everything, every sound you hear, it is going in. Like we are living in this pollution, I can have an air purifier at home, I can wear a mask, yet it doesn't mean that nothing will go into my lungs. It will. So through the skin it will go. So we cannot avoid it, but we can minimize as much as possible. And for children and for ourselves to choose consciously, and then this especially for the adults, to every evening, like she says, organize and reject, see what is not in harmony with your ideal, uh, reject that. And then gradually, if you can learn to do it in the moment through stepping back and all those exercises, then that's the best. So it's a continuous practice, mindfulness. Okay, do we want to read these questions? Why do some children take interest in things only when there is some excitement? And then this is about
What
the ashrams.
options? Like, if we don't do this, then what do we do instead?
Uh, okay, yeah, maybe it is good to start a new chapter next time.
Yeah.
We will be going on to physical education. The next chapter is physical education. So then let's read this, okay?
Right.
Pooja, you want to take up this entire answer, the question and the answer?
Why do some children take interest in things only when there is some excitement? They are tamasic. It is due to the large proportion of tamas in the nature. The more tamasic one is, the more does one need violent events, exciting circumstances. When the physical is tamasic, unless one eats spices and highly flavored food, one does not feel nourished. And yet, these are poisons. They act exactly like poison on the nerves. They do not nourish, but it is because people are tamasic because they do not have a sufficient consciousness in their body. Well, mentally, it is the same thing, vitally the same thing. If they are tamasic, they always need new excitements, dramas, murders, suicides, etc., to feel anything at all. Otherwise, and there is nothing that makes one more wicked and cruel than tamas. For it is this need of excitement which shakes you up a little, makes you come out of yourself. And one must also learn there to distinguish between those who are exclusively tamasic and those who are mixed and those who are struggling with themselves with their different parts. One must know in what proportion their nature is constituted, so as to be able to insist at need on one thing or another. Some people constantly need a whipping from life in order to move, otherwise, they would spend their time sleeping. Others, on the contrary, need calming things, silence, a retirement in the countryside. All these things that do a lot of good, but which must disappear as soon as one needs to make an effort for progress or to realize something or struggle against a defect, conquer an obstacle. It is complicated, don't you think so? The proportion is very important. This proportion of the three gunas, you know the three gunas? The proportion of the three gunas in the nature. And one must know the exact proportion in oneself and how to use one guna to fight the other, and so on. But there is a moment when one should attain a certain equilibrium and then be capable of establishing it in oneself a little steadily and facing life without having to fall into holes or struggle against terrible things. From that moment on, everything goes well. There's something about the gunas written here, or no footnote.
The three principles of Indian psychology: tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas is the principle of inertia and obscurity. Rajas, the principle of passion, desire, and dynamism. Sattva, the principle of light and equilibrium. Generally, the physical consciousness has a greater tendency, but these manifest at all levels. But physical consciousness has a greater tendency to tamas, vital to rajas, and mind to sattva. But there is always a mixture.
But in the way in which it's described, which is inertia and obscurity, it shouldn't be so, it shouldn't be so toxic. Because in this chapter, it sounds like if you have tamas, then you're toxic, if you look at the question, it's just above. It says, why do some children take interest in things only when there is some excitement? So it's like saying that, they're hyperactive, they're overexcited, they need drama, suicide, murders, etc. But then tamas is about inertia and obscurity. So I'm not sure. I don't really understand how that goes together.
Excitement is to do with rajas. When you tell the children also a story, you have to modulate your voice, you have to bring in the vital energy. If you don't bring it in, the children are bored, they are not interested. To catch their attention, generally, there are very few children who respond to a very quiet voice or this thing. Generally, they like this drama. And children, so she's saying, because there is tamas, there is a tendency to go to sleep. So to break that, rajas has to come in, excitement has to come in. And so the need for excitement arises from the need to overcome tamas in oneself, not consciously, but when there is. So generally, if I'm feeling dull, I would not like to listen to more dull music. I would like to listen to some peppy music to come out of that dullness, you know. So it is this principle she's explaining. And she's saying that uh, they, I think here she's moving on to not just children, she's moving on in general again, that the more tamasic one is, the more, like somewhere she's spoken another conversation about the Chinese culture where the punishments, you know, the cultures where lots of cruelty is there in punishments, in crime, against crime and all lot of, and she says that's because the natures are very tamasic, and unless they have that extreme sensation, they don't feel that it is painful or anything. So there is a need for to go to the extreme, and that creates that kind of cruelty. So it is an excess of the rajasic, a wrong excess, but it is kind of counterbalancing the tamas in the nature. So she says, and she's giving first of all at the physical this thing that, you know, people who love spicy food, who love, you know, all these rajas, these are all anyway considered rajasic foods, the fried and spicy and all that. So she says they don't feel
Are they
nourished
Rajasic
with
foods
meat.
or tamasic foods?
Sorry,
Are they Rajasic foods or tamasic foods?
rajasic. They break the tamas.
Oh, I see.
They break the tamas. The foods which are dull, which make you feel dull, are tamasic, which kind of pep you up are rajasic.
So this is the nature trying to balance itself. So when the physical is tamasic, then you try and balance it by eating
Yeah,
foods
yeah.
which are spicy and whatever, whatever.
That's what she says, that people don't feel nourished. Although these foods are not good for you, but you feel I'm not nourished because there is so much tamas that you need to break it through spices and all. So although in actual fact they don't nourish you, they are like poison. But it is because people are tamasic, because they don't have sufficient consciousness in their body at the physical level, in the body. Mentally, then she says it's the same thing, and vitally the same thing. If they are tamasic, if the vital is tamasic, you know, prone to depression, prone to dullness, etc. Like some people, when they're angry or they're upset, they sulk. Other people, they rebel and they become violent. So these are two different kinds of vital responses. Too. In one case, there's tendency towards tamas. In other case, there is tendency towards more rajas. So they always need new excitements, dramas, murders, suicides to feel anything at all, if there is tamas in the vital. And so she says tamas makes one more and more wicked and cruel. If you have at the vital level, you have tamas, then it will push you towards being cruel and wicked because you will not feel, you know, you will, like, you will hit somebody and you'll say it's nothing, you know, unless you really get a very extreme response from them, then you will feel satisfied. Now I've given this person pain. So there is this need to feel extreme sensations and emotions. Person could be masochist, person could be sadistic. It could express in any which way.
So it's like being numb.
Yeah, at the vital level, you are numb. So she says, excitement makes you come out of yourself. And then she says one has to distinguish between those who are exclusively tamasic, those who are mixed, and those who are struggling within themselves with their different parts and the proportion, etc. So it's like the ingredients, you know, to make a good dish, you have to know what are the ingredients and in what proportion to mix them. So in the ordinary life, all these three gunas are needed and you have to balance them. That attitude chart, which I often do, is related to this principle, tamas, rajas, and sattva. All of these are needed. But in the spiritual life, there comes a point when one has to go beyond the three gunas. That is a much higher state. So she's kind of hinting towards that, that when she says there is a moment when one should attain a certain equilibrium, facing life, blah, blah, blah. So that is further. But for our daily lives, we have to, first of all, observe ourselves and understand what is the nature of my physical consciousness, what is the nature of my vital, my mind, and to counteract it. Any other questions or comments?
If I share somebody who always look for excitement, keep looking for excitement, and a small thing excites that person is more from coming from tamasic and asking for rajasic experience to excite that. And on the other hand, for a person, neither the happiness, neither the sad moments doesn't bring so much of change in somebody's mood or attitude. That is more person is equilibrium and doesn't have a tamasic. That has sattvic.
It's
That
very interesting. It
I'm
is very
just trying to from understanding perspective.
very
Yeah.
to confuse tamas and sattva.
Hmm.
One has to observe carefully. Sometimes somebody is, very looks very peaceful,
Hmm.
is not responding. People might think, oh, this person is very sattvic, but the person might be very tamasic actually. So tamasic that cannot be bothered to respond to neither happiness nor sadness. So one has to be careful to see, is it bringing, Sattva is the principle of light. So is it bringing light in your consciousness and a lightness of being, or is it bringing a dullness when I am dull? Like for example, if I'm struggling with an illness, I've become weak, I've become tired. Obviously, tamas has increased. If even if somebody comes, earlier I would be bothered about that thing. Now I'm so busy and so feeling weak and tamasic and feel like sleeping, I cannot be bothered. The same thing which I would have panicked or been very anxious or got excited about, in this moment I'm just not bothered. But that's not sat, that's an excess of tamas. So that is there.
Um,
Yeah.
Didi, some people's appearances uh, um, not very excitement or not feels other matlab, very calm and not calm and quiet, but yes, we can hear, we don't get excited anything. That means uh, he or matlab, that person is filled of tamas.
No, I said it's difficult to distinguish between tamas and sattva. So it is for the person to reflect, unless I know somebody very well, and it is difficult to say like that. That person will know the best based on what it creates in their state of consciousness. Does it make them feel light and full of a quiet energy and peaceful, or does it is it bringing dullness in them, indifference? People also sometimes mistake indifference for equality. Indifference and equanimity are not the same thing.
I was just thinking that this question applies for the generation today because they need excitement to with their devices all the time because their nervous system is now so tuned to the excitement offered by the devices that without that they're always in a state of boredom and
Yeah,
they don't know what to do.
it is true, and yet it is also true that the forms have changed. I think human nature has always been the same. It is the forms. Earlier, people used to go to the kotha, have alcohol, go for mujras, uh, have go horse riding, shooting. All the kshatriya pursuits were rajasic. So now I'm getting, and I can also look at the iPad and all in a very sattvic way, or in a tamasic, or it creates more tamas in me, use of these things. So ultimately, nature remains the same. You see, that's the problem. Human nature is the same since prehistoric times. The forms are different. We cannot say that human nature has become worse than before.
No, I'm not saying worse, but definitely there has been a change in the whole. There's this proven research which is going on how our nervous system is being affected, how our neural pathways are being affected, and how these things are generating excitement in us. And we see it with our children every time, with little ones, with teenagers, everybody, that the moment they don't have a gadget, they are restless and they don't know what to do. And for us, boredom was a very good thing. We never thought of it as boredom in our generation. But the moment they don't have, like, supposing we're all traveling in the car, and if we are not into any exciting game or any music, then and the kids want the gadgets, and the moment the gadgets are taken away, they're like, okay, then they go off to sleep.
That is true. During COVID, we saw that how many nervous breakdowns there were, even suicides, because people just didn't know how to be with themselves. There always some action and interaction was required. Just to be with themselves is something which is become very rare. Same way as physical environment, all the pollution, all the environmental degradation is affecting us, our health, our psychological health also. Same way it is this technological thing is affecting. That is true.
Anuradha Di,
Yeah.
earlier kings went to for shikar. So that is tamasic or mixed with cruelty and all.
No, no, no. Hunting and any sport, basically it is Rajasic. But there are certain, you see, martial arts. Look at martial arts. If you do it only as martial arts, then it is Rajasic. But the genesis of martial arts was like meditation. It was to control, to become aware of the chi, the energy in yourself, to be able to control it, direct it where you will. It was a spiritual exercise. Then it is not Rajasic. Then it is actually a spiritual exercise where, and the whole demeanor of the person had to be sattvic. Same way, the princes who were trained by rishis, it was the same thing. They were learning to be sattvic, and yet they were all learning rajasic sports and warfare and everything. That was the need of the time. Sattvic doesn't mean that you cannot do now anything, you can't play sports, and all the gunas are important. It is the balance. In what proportion you have what, and in which moment which guna will be active. If you can decide that and you can control that, that is the aim. Not that we have to all become now only sattvic. That is not, that is what generally most religions say, become only sattvic. That is not what is being said here. All three are important. Okay, so let's end here. Next time we will take up physical education. Okay. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.